and thinking about what does your business need to do to capture new opportunities, particularly in this very dynamic environment that we are in. So what I'm going to do now is just share my screen so I can show the slides, and we'll have a lot of discussion moving forward. So let me just get that going. Balden or Monica, I need the host sharing capability.
Try now, Dr. Walker.
Okay, here we go. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Can everybody see my screen? Miss Von Lee and Miss Nolan? Trying to make sure I get everybody's names right.
I see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. All righty. So this is our third session, like I said. We'll be covering strategy. So far, we've covered getting organized, because this bootcamp is geared to those who are currently in business. Our second section, we talked about building a customer base and thinking through that. And so today is about strategizing so you can shift and grow. And then on Thursday, we're going to wrap all of this up, and this will all come together in terms of talking about managing the money. Because at the end of the day, a business needs to have enough income to maintain itself as well as generate profit. So these are not just academic exercises. They all have a particular goal in mind, and it's these boot camps are to make sure that you're on the right track for profitability. Right. So I see one or two people I think may have just joined us. So if we could just pretend like we're in a classroom, old school style, sitting around a circle. If we could just have a quick introduction from everybody, your name, type of business, number of years, and shameless plug, like Balden said earlier, please put your website or other business information in the chat. We'll greatly appreciate it. I'm a big supporter of small local businesses, so we want to make sure we do that. So who wants to start off? Ms. Nolan or Ms. Von Lee, I'm sorry.
I'll start. So my name is Tierra Nolan. Hope everyone is having a good day so far. The type of business that I have is a all-natural hypoallergenic deodorizing spray that you can use in your office, your home, pet beds, kid playrooms, things of that nature. I've been in business less than a year. This is something that I came up with from the idea of friends coming over and leaving their scent on furniture, and also dealing with a child that has bad allergies due to high pollen counts and sniffing and sneezing all over the house. So I wanted to come up with something to also spray in the air vents to kind of purify the air in the home. So I'm hoping to learn from this everything that you all have to offer, advise me on. I'm just like an open vessel here. Okay. And I'm really excited about this, and to take back everything that you guys took the time out to teach us today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I just was on your site, so I'm checking out a couple of your products already. Ms. Von Lee, you are welcome. Maybe she's, you might be on mute if you're talking.
We also have Sonia Musari, who just joined.
Okay, feel free to introduce yourself.
The name of your business. Yeah.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi. My name's Sonia Musawir, and my business is SHM Consulting Services, LLC. I've been in business over 15, 20 years. And basically, it's working with a lot of not-for-profits and other agencies doing accounting, bookkeeping, and consulting,
Okay.
and also
Accounting.
a whole bunch of other stuff. But
Can you pronounce your last name again? Musa Weir?
Musa Weir.
Musa. I like that.
Thank
That's
you.
strong.
Thank you.
Is that the name of the company too?
Yes.
Okay. Is it like Musa Weir Consulting?
It's just the abbreviations, SHM.
I would have went with Musa. That's fierce. Okay. Now I'm sorry, I'm getting on sidetracked. My bad. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who's up next? Miss James or Miss Vaughn Lee? Yes.
This Miss Wally. Yes. Vaughn Lee of Rosemary Notary. I've been in business less than a year. I've got my commission. Woo, and
Oh, okay.
I'm ready to do some business profitably.
Okay. All right. Notary. You were on last time, right? I remember.
Yes.
There was at least one notary. Okay.
I'm having
Wonderful.
Look, this Thursday I will have clear audio.
Your audio is breaking up on us.
Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, I still have to work, so I have to be
Okay.
on my job to actually pay
Gotcha.
the bills now. So I'm gonna have to be quiet for a while.
Okay. No problem. No problem. Again, please put your information in the chat so
Thank you.
we can all support. Anybody else, Baldwin, that has joined us? Before we move
Miss
forward.
James.
Hi, how are you? My name is Deidre James, and I actually am in the very beginning stages. I'm still at my day job, but thinking about potentially starting a business, maybe in food service. So just here to, we're here to learn and explore. So thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining.
And I just want to say thank you for the very informative session last week as well. And that's why I came back again, because I think these are all things that I need to be thinking about. So.
Oh, great, great. Well, hopefully this one will add to the library of information. And thank you for bringing up that point. I just want to warn everybody that you don't have to learn all of this right now. So it's a lot of information, but we do have methods to help lay it out so it's all very manageable. You got to understand, if you're starting a business, running a business, growing a business, or moving up to a next level, it's all about learning new things so you can grow to that next level. So with that being said, we'll move forward. So just like last time, we're going to encounter a lot of different new terminology, new concepts, and it's going to seem like a jumble of words, but by the time we're done in about another hour and like 15 minutes, you'll have a whole host of new information to help you with your business. And I must add a little disclaimer that this presentation is only for informational purposes. Your exact requirements or the circumstances of your business will vary. And so we'll be able to do a more deeper dive on what would be best applicable for your business on a one-on-one session. Okay, so for strategy, the core elements we're going to cover, of course, is always a starting point. We're going to do a little bit of background about the defining strategy, and there's a lot of controversy about that. And then I'm going to give you some basic steps for how do you go about developing a strategy. And then lastly, just as a reminder, the key point of this whole process is that you have to write down the decisions you make. It's hard to execute on what you want to do if you do not write it down. So this is where you're going to be updating your business plan. So that's going to be something I'm going to be emphasizing throughout the presentation. So what's the top reason for developing a business strategy? Many people go into business without having a strategy. There are a lot of businesses operating, and some might even be doing well, and they don't have a strategy in place, and they might be wondering why they're not doing better than they should. And the key thing to remember is that business is competitive. No matter if you're the first to produce a certain product, you're always there in a competitive landscape. So developing a strategy is allowing you to figure out how you're going to be different. How are you going to uncover the competitive advantage that's going to lead to you delivering value to your customers. We talked a lot about that last time, that it's all about the benefit to the customer. Okay. So a little recap of what we covered last time. I developed this a few years ago, just trying to have a basic definition of what a business is that kind of applies across the board. So let's go over what we talked about last time. So business is an operation, meaning it's organized, it's legally established, it has its license, insurance, it has an organizational structure and systems that allows it to provide valuable products and services and experiences that solves a customer problem. And the customer's problem is either a need or a want. And your job as the business owners determine how is your business going to solve that problem for them. In exchange, the customer or customer groups will offer a payment in which you will collect timely and efficiently. So as you can imagine, our next session will focus a lot about the money. But right now we're focused on how do you make all of this different so it attracts the right customer to you, so you can deliver the value, so they will in turn want to pay you, willingly want to pay you for the products and services. Okay? So that's a business. There's that diagram represents a business, but it doesn't operate in a vacuum. It operates in a very dynamic external environment. And then how your business is set up, it also has an internal environment. So what this slide is illustrating here is that as you are operating your business and making decisions about how it grows, there are outside forces that are pushing on your business, that are making it sometimes difficult. But at other times, if you look at it from a different lens or perspective, those external forces are going to be the source of opportunities. So the internal environment are the resources, the systems, the practices that you're using to produce the product, to create value, to attract customers, to collect the money, etc. And the internal environment can have what we call strengths and weaknesses. But on the external side, there's a shifting environment in which there are a host of factors. And I just kind of illustrated some major groups that you might want to consider. And it's going to vary based upon the type of business you're going to be in, how sizable these factors are. So we have customer and market forces. So customers have demands and they have wants and needs. So they're going to be pushing on your business. You have industry and competition forces. So your competitors are going to be trying to outdo you, and that's going to put some pressure on you on some of the choices you make. The technology itself, we have learned this with COVID. Technology puts a lot of pressures on small businesses because there's expectations that customers have and how they want to use technology to access your products and services. The industry sometimes has requirements of what would be the standard of how you use your technology. Also, there's a lot of government regulations and requirements that might be for some of you, it might be limited to the business registration, business taxes that we talked about in the Get Organized section. But for others that are in a highly regulated industry, it might be even more scrutiny that you have to abide by. So the ones, I think it was Ms. James said she was talking about food service. There's a lot of regulations about food safety and handling. So those are the things you will have to be mindful of and make sure you adhere to them, but still try to be competitive. There are culture and society norms, which changes over time. What was acceptable from a business last year may not be acceptable now. What was acceptable 5-10 years ago, the attitudes and how we feel about certain products and their impact on our lives changes. If you recall, there was the tobacco lawsuit a number of years ago. There's been a slow decline of smoking because we, as a society, no longer want to kind of indulge in that habit as much as we did in previous years. So those things change your business, and you have to be aware of them and make the appropriate decisions for your business. And then there's other forces and factors that you will come up with as you learn your industry and as you learn more about your business, because every day is a growth opportunity as you run your business. Okay. So how we go about defining strategy. This is the trickiest part of this presentation. There is no one absolute definition of strategy, unfortunately. There's a lot of debate in the business academic world. And so there are many schools of thought and concepts of how you define it and what it is. So I just provided you the 4 basic strategy definitions that you might hear or you might see in reading some business magazines and the like. So number 1 would be adaptation. You have execution and concentration. I provided their little definition here. So adaptation is all about that school of thought is thinking, okay, you want to be the first and you want to act quickly and respond to external events. So you have it's more of a learning organization. In the execution school of thought, they focus on strategy in terms of aligning people and processes to perform and provide operational excellence. In the concentration school of thought, they focus on the current corporate business and how do you grow that, and that's the whole thinking about what they think strategy is. I subscribe to the definition of strategy that's around position, in which you're trying to create and hold a distinctive position in the marketplace. So you're trying to be different, not to be just different for different sake, but different so that you are outperforming everybody else because you're delivering the value to the customer. And so that school of thought is led by a renowned Harvard University professor. I know it's hard to be quoting Harvard all the time, but Michael Porter. He did a lot of research in this field. And so there are a lot of articles, videos on his perspective. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you is like a 5-minute video of him describing strategy. And it's one of the best that you will find to just kind of identify what strategy is, because it's not what most people think it is. So let me just get out of here for a second. Okay, there we go. And before I get started, can everybody see? Whoops. Can everybody see the screen has changed? Sometimes the Zoom acts a little funny.
Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect. So this is going to be less than 2 minutes.
I don't think we're seeing the video, Doctor. We're seeing the presentation slide still.
Oh, okay.
Linked to Michael Porter video. So I think that's what we're still seeing.
Okay, let's do this and come back out. And I'll go directly to it. Can everybody see it now?
Yeah,
Yes.
like a YouTube screen.
Yeah. So it shows a YouTube channel?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. There we go.
To get the volume for us, we're not getting volume. I don't think, unless everyone else is.
No.
So I believe you have to click on the 3 dots, Dr. Walker, next to share screen in order to turn the audio on for us to hear your audio.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
There are the more button, there are those little 3 dots beside the share screen button. It should have a volume sound share.
So let's try this one more time.
Yeah.
if we're going to have a good strategy, we've
Here
got
we
to think clearly about what strategy is.
Are we good now?
Yes, we're good. We're good.
Okay. Sorry about that.
And we've got to separate strategy from the other kind of goals and objectives and issues that managers often think about. On this slide are really the big three mistakes in terms of defining strategy. Mistake number one, my strategy is to internationalize. I hear that kind of thing all the time. My strategy is to consolidate my industry. My strategy is to ramp up my R&D budget. My strategy is to outsource more of my production. Is that a strategy? No. Those are steps that your organization may want to take. They may be good steps. They may be appropriate steps. They aren't a strategy. The strategy is what unique position will we be able to achieve? What's our advantage going to be at the end of the day as we take these steps cumulatively over time? That's the strategy part. The strategy part's about how are we going to be unique, how are we going to have an advantage, how are we going to sustain that advantage over time. The steps we take are not the strategy. But you'd be surprised how many companies get themselves fixated on a particular action that they want their organization to take, and that becomes the strategy. And of course, it then often drives the company literally off the cliff because they kind of don't understand why they're doing it and when they should stop doing it.
Okay. So let's take a second to think about that. What is everybody's initial thought? He said strategy is not the action in the steps. Oops, hold on.
My initial thought is that I need a strategy.
That's a good way. Okay, all right. Now, anybody else?
I was thinking what he was describing were tactics versus a strategy. And so making sure that I think in particular when he said you need to know why you're doing what you're doing is important, especially if you grow beyond a one-man shop and you have employees, so they know that this is part of a larger strategy and not just a tactic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the key thing, if you don't learn anything else tonight, the key thing to remember is that your strategy is not about any particular action you want to do or any particular step you want your business to follow. It's like he said, it's a larger concept because you're thinking about what position in the industry am I going to own, absolutely own. And as a result, because I have a certain advantage, and that advantage is going to deliver a benefit to the customer. Because if we can make sure we're good on that, we're like my uncle used to say, we're cooking with gas. Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm having a little bit of issue here. I gotta move this forward. Okay, sorry about that. For some reason, I'm stuck in a loop and it doesn't want to move forward. So I'll just have to close out. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we got it. So as you think about your business and however number of years you've been operating your business, you have to think about what does the competitive landscape look like? So here is just a quick sketch of what you can use to kind of figure out who are all the players that you're dealing with, just in very general terms, and try to figure out, you start thinking about where in the marketplace do I want to be in this landscape. So I did a very quick and dirty. Some people call this a competitor landscape mapping, whatever the case may be. I don't want you to get caught up in the words. I just did a X and Y axis, and I put some dots to indicate. So there's some market leader. And let's say for this type of business, let's say it's a retail business, there's an online factor and there's place-based businesses. So for most businesses, that tends to be a very huge factor that you're competing with. And then on one end, I put affordability. On the other end, I put luxury, prestige kind of brand. So you're one or the other. You're online or place-based, you're affordable, or you're luxury. And I just kind of mapped out, okay, so the number one company and probably in this industry, they're doing a lot of, they have a significant online presence, and perhaps they're leaning towards the luxury side of things. You can see there's number 3, still good sizable company, just by the size of the circle. I'm just kind of indicating how big they are, how much market share. So they're leaning towards being affordable, but they're more place-based, meaning they have actual brick and mortar store. So if I were doing a retail operation, I would try to figure out, based upon the analysis that we're going to walk through, what position do I need to play that could possibly achieve the results I want. And as you can see, there are a lot of empty spaces. That's how you have to think about it. There's a lot of empty spaces once you examine your industry closely. Okay. So key parts of the strategy that we need to keep in mind as we walk through the steps to developing a strategy, that a good competitive strategy is one that creates unique value for a particular set of customers. So you're not trying to go after every single person. It's because number one, you're not going to have enough money. And number two, you're not going to meet the needs or the wants of everybody. So you've got to define who is going to be the customer segment that's going to utilize your product and service and get value from it. And so the key concept is that number one, you have to be unique. You have to set yourself apart from everybody else because you're doing a different set of activities. And when we say company activities, we're talking about all you might have a different set of products, you might have a different set of a production system, your HR practices might be different, your financial accounting, you might be really good at it, so you're so efficient on how you do things. It's all the stuff that you have to do to run the business that you figure out what aspect needs to be different. Not everything needs to be different. It's just the right thing needs to be different. So the business is unique. The other critical part about strategy is you have to determine what you will not do. And this tends to be a point of difficulty for many business owners because they want to do it all. They want to get all the customers, and that's just not going to be feasible. So when you determine a strategy, and a strategy is about being unique, there's some things you will not do, even though the rest of the industry, the rest of your competitors may be doing that. You will decide what not to do because you're going to focus on that element that is going to give your customers the greatest level of value. The next thing is that all of your company activities are going to fit together to provide the value. And this is why it's so critically important to decide what you are not going to do.
So Dr. Walker.
Yep.
Question. So if a small business owner decides that, they don't like a construction,
half a mile,
for
turn
example,
left to Farragut Street
they
Northwest.
don't one second. So they do not do electrical work. They do carpentry.
Right.
But what if, I own that company and I decide, well, I want to do electrical work, but I don't have staff that actually are electricians.
Right.
So as a result, I'm going to outsource.
Right.
That not to do, or is that being strategic, or how do we look at that?
Great question. The point is, you have to figure out if the expansion from carpentry into electricity services fits the company. If you are branded as a carpentry contractor in specialty, it's going to seem rather odd that you're now selling electrical services to your customers or to new customers, right? Because everybody's going to know you for carpentry. But if you're marketing yourself as a contractor that specializes in particular crafts or profession in construction, and you just happen to start off with carpentry, then it makes sense that you're going to expand into electrician or then welding or whatever the case might be. So it's really about, like, at the end of the day, what kind of business are you going to offer? Are you going to be a craft contractor? And that craft that you're going to specialize in is carpentry? Because then there's so many other options you have within carpentry. There's the types of wood that you might be using. It's the types of areas of the home that you might be specializing in. You know, some people just do banister work and the stairwell work. So now those are the strategic decisions you need to make. And the hard part is that some, you know, it's a small business owner or entrepreneur, you'll see the electricians making money.
Yeah.
But if you chose to go down that road, you have to now dedicate resources to market that service, to build your resources, to build your capabilities. And that may take away from the carpentry. So those are the critical things, because you cannot do everything all the time. You have to, each of these have to be built. But if you start off saying, I'm going to be the master craftsman and, you know, key areas of construction, then expansion in electricity makes sense to me. But if you're a carpenter, then it becomes hard to wrap my head around of why you would be going that route, unless the research shows otherwise. And you will get, when we get to the internal analysis, your internal environment is built in such a way that it makes sense to have that service.
Okay.
But great question. Anybody else got a question or along those lines? That's a great question. Okay. Deciding what not to do will be your greatest hurdle for many of you. Because when you're a small business owner, you want to do it all. Because sometimes you could be overly focused on the money versus focus on the value to the customer that leads you to the money. Right? The other thing I want to make you aware of is that when we talk about strategy and that unique position in the industry, we're not talking about operational effectiveness. And sometimes we have to do some operational effectiveness. We have to make decisions to be more effective at what we do. And when we say operational effectiveness, we mean doing similar activities, but better than your competitors. Okay? Because remember, you might be in an industry that has certain regulations, that certain things you are required to do. So what if you become more efficient at it, whether that's the financing, or that's the invoicing, or whatever that case may be. So you still have to focus on what things you can be better at, but you don't take away from what you have to think about the activities you need to be different. So strategic positioning means performing different activities from your competitors, or performing similar activities in different ways. That's where you got to spend a lot of energy figuring out. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. So I put in there an example, and I tried to choose one that everybody can kind of sort of relate to. So you can get a sense of what this looks like on paper. So I picked IKEA. There's a lot of documentation on IKEA and their strategy. How many of us have shopped at IKEA in the last few years, or used to shop in IKEA when we were younger, so to speak? And can you go off mute for a second? Let me know how many of you are IKEA customers.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to know if the choir was still here, or was I the only one who was like a big geek for IKEA? Okay, so founded in the 40s by a gentleman who actually started out as an entrepreneur when he was a kid. And the goal was to sell quality furniture at affordable prices. the value proposition and the big idea that the business is wrapped around is offering wide range of well-designed functional home furnishing products at a low price. That's the value proposition. Okay.
And unpronounceable names.
Where they're Swedes, you know, so they
Right.
own the fact they're from Sweden, and they don't
Yes,
care.
they
They
do.
gonna
Right.
ride that out. But guess what? We go with it. We go there and we get.
We sure did it. We sound like fools when we try to pronounce
It's okay.
Ford couch.
I just take the little pencil and I circle what I want on the catalog, and that's we keep it moving. But that so you see how they bought into their strategy all in, and so they market as self-assembly, and they pitch it to the consumer as a benefit rather than a hassle. And you got to think about it. When IKEA entered the market, particularly in the United States, most of the major furniture stores, they might not even make the furniture they're selling. You had to have it delivered. They all had showrooms, so that's a similar thing that you would do than if you had a big furniture store. But look at the key differences of what they decided not to do. And so the big dark purple circles represents the core elements of the business activity to support the strategy. Because remember, the value proposition is about the well-designed functional home furnishing, right? So I'm going to start at the bottom of the diagram. So you have modular furniture design. And because they have to offer it at a low price, they have a very low cost production. So everything is done in-house. They set the price first. And so they tell their designers they want a couch that they can sell for $200. And the designer has to figure out how do you make a couch that they can sell for $200. But they use a modular design setup, which is quite different than many of the other furniture manufacturers or furniture companies but particularly when IKEA first entered the marketplace in the US. So they modular furniture, that leads to low manufacturing costs. To keep costs low, the customers has to pick out their own stuff, which is quite different from the major furniture stores back in the day, because you used to would say what you like, and then somebody has to go in the back to see if we have it in stock. And then if you say we have it in stock, if it's something you can buy and carry, somebody has to go in the back rooms in the stock room, get it, bring it out to you. IKEA was like, no, we're gonna not do all of that. We're not gonna have all the customer service reps. We're not gonna assist you with all of that. We're just gonna show you where everything is stocked up, and we're gonna give you a little rolling cart, and you pick out what you want, and you have at it. And so they added the limited customer service, which for most furniture companies, this was insane. They could not believe that this is what you would do. But look at all the other activities they have linked to these four pillars, so to speak, of their strategy. So they picked a suburban location that had ample parking. Because why? Because you were carrying the furniture away. So they needed a lot of space. They had a high traffic store layout. So it's a big store, and they just give you a map. So you roam around the store, but it became an experience for everybody. They have a lot of inventory on site because you're picking it out itself, and they want you to be able to find it. They want you to be able to get it. It's easy to transport for the most part because it was modular. So it was all packaged up in boxes that you could put in your car or strap to the roof of your car or whatever the case may be. So I want to give you a second and just take a look at this diagram, and then we're going to have a brief discussion about it. All right. Okay, what are some of your guys' thoughts just by looking at this?
One of the first things that jumps out at me is usually limited customer service is not necessarily an activity that's a virtue.
Right, right. But it's not a standalone. You see, it has a
True.
lot of other complementary, because they want you to have the experience of finding what you need. And you're also there, particularly in the early days of IKEA coming to the United States, you're there for the cost too. So you would give up certain customer service interaction because you also were there for the price. So you were willing to put it together yourself. But to entertain you while they were there, they had a restaurant in the building. Everybody loves the catalog.
Cheap meatballs.
Exactly. So you were, if you were there all day, you felt like you came away from that experience like, okay, this was a good day. I got the bedroom set I wanted. We ate. Because you could sit and all the stuff and play with all the stuff. So you can have a good experience, even though there was limited customer service. So that's a really good point that you brought up. Anybody else have a thought? And what I want to emphasize to you, you do not have to work all of this out for your business right now. Some of these activities and decisions you will make will evolve over time, but you got to have a starting point. Okay. So
I guess a quick question. So you're suggesting that, kind of going back to that map, that, as you determine your value proposition, you maybe select kind of 3 or 4 key nodes in terms of how you're going to deliver on that value proposition.
Right.
And then the light purple ones kind of come off of that.
Yeah. It will evolve over time. It will evolve. But you have to start. You have to be purposeful in where you start. And give me an example with your business again. I'm not sure who was speaking just now.
This is Deidre, who has no business yet.
Okay.
Idea
food service.
Something
food
around
service.
Yeah, right.
So one of your purple circles may be a certain type of food, right? Or you might be dealing with a certain health condition.
Right.
Right? That you might start there, and then you might say, okay, the next thing is maybe the packaging. It will be eco-friendly, and it will keep things fresher longer. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Okay.
But so you might just start with 1 or 2, and many times we have an idea in the back of our mind, but we got to do the research to say, okay, is that going to be viable? Is that going to attract the people I need to attract to sustain the business? Okay. So let's go through some analysis that might help you in making some of this determination. Okay. All right. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get an alignment of we have our purpose or mission statements. We'll have our vision, right? And we want to add our strategy to that, because it's the strategy that's going to get us to achieve the mission and vision. We want to have the value proposition, because the value proposition is linked to the strategy, because it's the promise of the benefit. The value proposition is going to be the result of that competitive advantage, so that those attributes we build up in the company, in the business, that's as a result of how we combine our systems, resources, and capabilities. And I put some examples of all the different systems of your business. And so this is where any number of those areas can be different. So for IKEA, say, they had a different type of production system. They had a different brand and branding position. They had a different marketing system. These are the areas they chose to be different. Okay, so there's a lot of ways you could be different. And at the end of the day, the way you design the systems, resources, and capabilities, those going to drive what the goals, objectives, and tactics are. And that's where you get your day-to-day activities, the day-to-day work that you and your employees have to do. So this is how strategy fits into all of the work that your business has to do. And this is why you and I may have been frustrated in a past job because we're doing day-to-day things and had no idea if it was connected to a strategy, to a mission, to a value proposition, or whatever the case may be. This is the alignment we're trying to get. And the fit, the company activities, this is where we're trying to get them to fit together to make sure we're competitive, to deliver the value, and to achieve the strategy. Okay. So a couple of steps on developing the strategy. Before that, go on. Any questions so far on that? Any thoughts? You're good? Okay. All right. So 3 critical processes that you're going to go through in helping you develop your strategy. And just know these are going to be repetitive. You're going to do these regularly for your business as part of your business planning process. So most of you, if you have your existing business plan, you need to dust that off and see where you are. So first of all, you're going to assess your industry and market. So you're going to look at the external environment and see what is going on, because remember, that's going to be the source of the opportunities. I put in a couple of questions you might want to ask yourself. What are the factors the industry uses to compete? So for IKEA, the industry used the customer service was a big factor. They decided we're not going to do that. So when you ask yourself the question, you start to look for the industry's take on it. You want to look to see who are the direct and indirect competitors. Direct competitors are those that do exactly what you're doing, and then those who offer products and services that might be similar to what you're doing. You want to know who are the customer segments. We talked about that last time. So that's the external environment you want to figure out. The internal environment, here is where you want to do this assessment on the view in your business. Okay, and this is what the Get Organized session, the first session, was about. You got to know your financial status. You got to know your strengths and weaknesses. Do you have all your certifications in order? Is your business registration, your taxes up to date? You got to see where you are, because if any of those things are not in order, that might be a weakness. And then if you're doing really well, like your financial status is good, you're not growing at the rate you would like, but you are hitting some profit margins that you determine. So you might have a strength in terms of financial management. So you got to review external environment, and you got to look at the internal environment. With that information together, you got to make decisions, because you're going to come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of strategic options, I call them, as a result of looking at your environment. And you have to make a decision, because every decision leads to an action, and each action needs to have a timeline and a budget and a set of metrics of how you're going to measure the success to it. So you got to decide, what are you going to do? Okay. So I provided an examples of various types of assessments, tools that are out there. Let me be clear. If you were to Google strategy development, strategy tools, there is a lengthy list of tools you can use. It's a bit overwhelming. So I just picked 2 or 3 of things that I've used commonly, or I've seen regularly, and things I know that are fairly easy to learn and do the job. Okay, so we have a pestle analysis. So I put this in italic, as I recommend if you're going to start somewhere, this is probably the easiest one to get you started, because all you're doing is just listing the key factors in these areas: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environment. There's some other variations because they add some other categories. Like I said, there are a plethora of templates you can Google together. So if you just had this analysis, the pestle analysis or pest analysis that I like to refer to it, you're just going to write down and just use a notebook. If you want to use Excel, you want to use Word, that's fine too. And you're going to think about it. What are all the political factors that are impacting my business? What are the economic factors, social, technology? You just write them down. The EFE is fairly similar. It does a similar job of listing those external factors, but it also allows you to start ranking them and giving them assigned weights of how important they are. So it's a little bit more complicated than just listing in the pest analysis. The 5 forces are also developed by Michael Porter, focuses on some very specific forces that might be impacting your business. So he looks at how powerful are the suppliers, how powerful are your buyers, what are threats of substitutes, meaning what are the other products that and companies that we can use instead of you, and then what are the threats in terms of new entrants and competitive rivalry. So this looks at very specific items to kind of, you just would write in the description, whereas the pest analysis is a little broader, and the external factor evaluation that's usually part of the SWOT analysis is a little bit more technical and has a little bit more calculations, okay? But either way, you've got to just write down what are the factors that impact your business. Some great sources is your industry associations. They're always producing reports about what's going on with your industry. And then the census has completed last year. So we now have a lot of census data coming out about competitors, about the demographics in your area, if that's your potential customer base, etc. So you do not have shortage of information. What you do have to do is manage your time and which tool you're going to use to get the most amount of information for your business. The more complex your business, the more complex you might want to have the tool, because you might be looking at very subtle differences and nuances in those factors. But for right now, you can start off with the pest analysis. You can do that tonight if you would like, and get you a good idea of what's going on in your external environment. All right. For the internal, there's a good old fashioned what we call a gap analysis. A lot of nonprofits use it, but I've used it for for-profit businesses as well. And again, it's just a simple list of where you are in your business, looking at very broad categories: financially, customers, reputation, just main goals that you have for your business. You write them down, and then you try to say, okay, where was I supposed to be at this stage of the business? And you literally write the difference between where you are and where you were supposed to be. And that's a simple gap analysis. And it's a quick and dirty way to figure out, okay, where am I strong at, and where are my weaknesses? Where's the business doing well, and where is it the areas that we really need to work on? A little bit more sophisticated way is the internal factor evaluation, similar to the external one. You're going to list and rank your strengths and weaknesses by importance. So it's a little more involved in terms of how you go about doing it. And I can provide a separate presentation on SWOT because it can get rather detailed, because most people do it incorrectly because they don't do through all these steps. But just starting out, or you've been running your business for a few years, you're not quite sure, you just got yourself organized. If you had a gap analysis and a pest analysis, that would be enough to get us started to start figuring out what your strategy would be. Okay. The other ones I added here were the SWOT in terms of making the decision. So if I have my external and internal assessments together, I can do a full SWOT analysis, which can get rather extensive. I can use Porter's generic strategies, where it helps me to point out if I want to use a cost strategy, a differentiate strategy, or a focus strategy. I tend to think that this Porter's generic strategy tends to be too generic sometimes, but it's really up to you. What I do recommend is that perhaps you want to entertain using what is called a blue ocean strategy. It is a 4-action framework, and it's very simple. You try to write down the factors in the industry that you would erase. You would raise, create, eliminate, or reduce. I like this framework because it gets to the heart of where are we going to be different. So if you had your external analysis, which you've identified all the factors in your industry, you have your internal analysis, so you have an idea of what the business is good at, what it's strong at, where is it weak. This 4-action framework, and I provided links to everything, allows you to think, okay, which of these areas, the factors I laid out externally, that I'm going to be different in. I'm going to do it just like the industry, or I'm going to do it more than the industry does it, or I'm going to create something new, or am I going to eliminate altogether something the industry thinks is important? Back to our IKEA example, this eliminates or reduces the customer service. That could be a way to be different. Or I'm going to say, what do I reduce that the industry is determined to be a standard, but I'm going to reduce it because I'm going to focus on other areas. So right now, I just want to open it up to the floor and get everybody's thoughts because we're right on time. Any thoughts on that? Developing your strategy, internal assessment, external assessment, put it together, and then you start to make decisions about what would be best for your business. Thoughts? Don't make me start calling people out because I see quite a few people have joined us.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
So you're suggesting first start with the internal assessment and then do the external assessment, or the other way around?
Either way. Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't matter
And-
on that side of it.
And then bringing them together, those two together through either the SOAR or the Blue Ocean strategy?
Right. Yeah, whatever tool you use, just make sure you have the information from the internal and external assessment together with you. So you're looking at both. Because you have to make decision to say, okay, if I decide to, like say, let's for example, you're going to use the Blue Ocean strategy and therefore action strength. If I want to raise the factor, you got to know the implications that's going to have internally, and then how does that look to the external environment? Because then after all you do all this, then you got to figure out your marketing, because you got how do you communicate the value proposition, etc. So have the information handy right next to each other. And that's usually a step a lot of people forget. They do the assessments and then they leave it alone and try to make decisions on their own without looking at the information.
I think one of the things I was really, it does, but I was going to say that one of the things that was really helpful in the last session is how you had that example of the catering company.
Right.
And kind of walk through the steps. So kind of maybe keeping that example in mind, like how would you suggest that they then kind of use the tools and then move to the strategy?
Okay, so let me go back. So if I started off, well, let's say we're going to do external, right? I'm going to use the pest analysis. So for Soul City Catering, I'm going to think, okay, what are the key factors externally? Okay, what are the political implications in my industry? Remember, it's food service. Are there any political implications right now? Not many. There are some COVID implications that we'll get to later. So that there's some political government impact, but not much political there. What are the economic implications in the industry? So the industry has been hit very hard in terms of food service. So there's there at the time things are opening up. There was very little people contact because of COVID. So I got to look to see, okay, how decreased are the purchasing of food in-house or in a restaurant base? Are there, or is it people have shifted their buying habits to the meal kits, ordering online, etc. So I'll write some economics about that, some data. What are the social factors that are impacting the catering service? So if we think of the meal kit, I would say it doesn't have the same impact as the social experience of going out to a restaurant or going to an event that's catered. So there's mostly in-home, in-family, close-knit groups that you're dealing with there. The family-oriented, it's the mother who wants to feed the child. It may be the single man who doesn't want to cook, or whatever the case may be. So those are some factors I would jot down in terms of the social implications. Technology, COVID has impacted the way we use the internet. There's a lot more applications. There's Grubhub for delivery, for ordering, etc. So now I got to research what are all the known or standards in food service around technology. And so it's more than just, you know, having a website. It's more than social media. It's, am I tapped in to the applications that people are used to accessing food and ordering food? Are there legal requirements or impact I need to follow? Of course, there's always the health and safety. Do I need to have any special labeling on the packaging? That kind of thing. So I'll be thinking of all the legal implications. Am I making sure that I'm not misleading in any way, particularly with COVID or restrictions of how I prepared or delivered anything, you know, am I staying, you know, I'm following all the safety regulations. And in environmental, in the industry, there's always an issue around single serve plastic utensils and packaging. Is that going to be an issue that I need to document? And I would probably say yes. You need to kind of indicate that because that's a bigger impact on the industry. So if I was City Soul Catering, that would just be a brief outline of the external factors I'd be dealing with. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me pick an internal assessment. So let's say we're going to do the gap analysis. And if I recall my example correctly, which is ironic, it's in the next presentation that I bring all this together for City Soul. So City Soul is a 3-year company that we said earlier. So in the gap, we had a goal by year 3, we would be doing, let's say, $150,000 in revenue. We would be rated on toply rated on Yelp or other reputational sites or customer review feedback. We'll have our own internal survey that indicates high 4 to 5. I think that was the goal. 4.5 out of 5 stars. We would grow to maybe 3 employees. And we would have the infrastructure of our website, our kitchen facility that was all linked by technology. That was a very tight inventory control. So I know exactly what was in my kitchen, what needed to be prepared, and how it was going to be prepared. Everything was going to be in the cloud. Let's say that by year 3, those are my goals. So that's what ideally where I should be at year 3. The gap reveals that my annual revenue for a City Soul was only 50,000, which is far less than the over 100K. I have 0 employees because it's still just me, and I have independent contractors as needed kind of work. So as the owner, I'm supposed to have a team of at least 3 other people. It's just me. As for my infrastructure, I have a commercial kitchen, but I have not linked all of that technology in together. So I have trouble, maintaining my inventory because I promised fresh products and goods. So that, that's been a bit of a challenge. But luckily, I've been able to get the 4.5 out of 5 stars as the review on Yelp or some other platform. And we've been able to do at least 1 customer survey, even though it's supposed to be yearly. We did 1 customer survey where most of the results were pretty favorable to support the 4.5 out of 5 star review. So I would write those differences of where I was, where I am, and where I thought I would be, because that's what I wrote in the business plan, where I'd be in year 3. So that would be that gap analysis, and from that list, I can identify, okay, I'm strong at the taste, so we can cook. But I'm weak at building infrastructure, and I'm weak at building growth to hire enough people so we can serve our own customers. So that gives me a nice breakdown of my strengths and weaknesses. How does that sound?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
All right. And so if I took that information and I had it side by side, I would start thinking about, okay, which of the factors would I raise, create, eliminate, or reduce? Right? And again, part of strategy is to be unique as well as determine which you will not do. Because it's a 1-person kind of show, I might give up the employees and be like, this is all independent contractor work. That way I can get people as needed. But perhaps I focus on independent contractor work with people who are like my clients, who are women who want to feed their families, and I can give them flexible work hours because our operation doesn't have the typical normal hours. So I might create a different hiring procedure so that I am not taking on full-time employees. That might be a way. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So that's how I would go through it. And you can see how you can come up with a long list of ideas of some things you might want to do. But after you get that list, you got to figure out which ones would be the most beneficial for the business. So this is why you have to write it down, document the options, and then document your choice of strategic options that you're going to execute, and then you're going to document why. And all of that, you should be doing it and updating your business plan. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I tried to simplify the steps as best as possible without taking away too much information. But the key to remember is this requires you to do a lot of thinking about your business, thinking about your industry. Some of you might just realize you just don't know enough about your industry, and that's fine. Set a timetable, 30 days, a quarter, to think about, okay, who do I need to reach out to? What membership do I need to join? And sometimes you can't join all the association. Whose newsletter I need to sign up for so I can get information and learn more about the industry I'm in to make better decisions for the business. For some of us, it may be, okay, I need to get really real about where my business is. Do I have my finances documented? Do I have my taxes paid up? Do I have all my records in place? Because if that might be a significant shortcoming or weakness in your business that impedes you from developing a true strategy for the business. Okay. Any thoughts or questions there? I know this is a big topic. There's usually a co-graduate course on just strategy, so it's a lot to cover in an hour and 50 minutes. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Okay.
I think the key word is that it evolves.
Yes, it does evolve. And start when you start. Even if you're, if you're a 5-year-old business and you've had moments where you did well and then other years you didn't do so well, just pick up where things went well and how do you build upon that? So you just got to keep building. Okay. All right. So a couple other considerations I want to bring up, just because so we can make sure we end on time. So for COVID, I just want to reemphasize, we talked about this in Get Organized, some of the impact. It impacts the internal and external environment. In the external environment, there are a lot of things we're still learning about how the economy, how businesses will operate. So it's going to be very fluid. So you got to be sure you're going to be okay with making decisions and making a change because the government might make the change because it's a public health emergency and that trumps everything else. Okay. So internally, you got to have systems and policies and practices to adhere to the health and safety guidelines. I put the link to the CDC. They had a really good page on their guidance for small businesses. So you got to look at that. And then the other big thing, you got to figure out how are you going to communicate to your current customers and your new customers that engages them as well as serves them, but keeps them updated if things need to change because of COVID. So those are two big issues you got to keep in your back of your mind of how do you maintain flexibility, because at any given time, there could be another shutdown. It's the harsh reality of where we're at. If there is a variant that sneaks up on us, that's what we're going to have to be dealing with. On the external side of things, keep track of your government regulations. So that means not only being in touch or having a newsletter from the Department of Small Business for DC, maybe also the DC Department of Health. There's going to be changes in the industry, changes in the market, customers, and their buying habits. Some of those changes are going to be permanent, and there's some research coming up now to try to determine what areas will be permanent or what areas will people go back to. So the thing to think about, quarantining and shutdown dramatically change the landscape. If you're place-based and you are not allowed to enter your facility, or your customers are not allowed to enter your facility that you are located, then you got to be able to adjust to that. Remote work, and at this point in time, it's remote everything. How do you maintain the business with that remote sense that we're at? And some companies will not go back to the office buildings, and some people will have a reduced workforce in an office building. So if you're located, like a food service, in a government building or where the large company is located, and you were dependent on that kind of exposure from customers, you got to rethink, how do I reach those same type of customers that might live around the building versus those who are coming to the building to work, right? The other big thing, use of technology. If one thing you want to invest in yourself as a small business owner is your knowledge and use of technology. Who knew we had to set up little studios in our homes to do the Zoom calls and the Microsoft Team calls? But if you need to understand those mechanisms to make your job of running the business easier, you need to do that, because those are not going away. Those systems have been adopted. Businesses have learned, they have gained efficiency with video conference calling, webinars, etc. And so you need to know how to maximize it for your business. Okay. And then lastly, I have a series of slides on special opportunities you want to consider. And that's government contracting and pursuing a certification, whether it being for a small business, minority-owned business, woman-owned business. There is a long list of certification programs that you can pursue, because number one, the government is the largest purchaser of goods and services, the federal government. And right behind that is state and local government. But also, many large corporations use the certification list to choose their vendors and to choose companies they want to work with. So, but it has to be something you market, and it has to be something that fits with your strategy. If you're not going after B2B, as we talked about before, meaning business to business or business to government, customer segments at this time, it may not be worthwhile to go deep into this at the moment. But if your strategy is to not be so tied to a particular, whether it's B2B customer or B2B business, then you should look at government contracting as an option, because many years, monies that was set aside for contracting to small local minority-owned businesses are not spent because they don't have enough people applying for those contractors or submitting their applications to be competitive in those arenas. So I wanted to just highlight the local program from DC Department of Small and Local Business Development. They have many various designations. I was even surprised at how the list has expanded over the years. And they are a big supporter of this boot camp. So I included the web address for everybody here. But DC government spends a lot of money, and we don't have enough small businesses capturing those funds. On the federal level, there is the Small Business Administration. They have the 8A program, women-owned small business program, as well as program for historically underutilized business zones. So this is not even if you're, women-owned or small business. It's if you're located in an area that has typically not been one to contract with the government. So location becomes key. And if a location is critical in your strategy, this might be an option for you. And then there's another list I was just kind of highlighting. We have the Department of Veteran Affairs, the National Women's Business Council, National Minority Supplier Development. A new hot one that has gained a lot of traction over the last few years is the B Corporation. So for those of you that are interested in doing the social good, being transparent, having accountability, a lot of people are preferring to buy with corporations that have this designation. We have the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. They have their own program for gay-owned businesses. And then you have the Minority Business Development Agency that a lot of people sleep on. They don't have a certification program, but they provide a lot of assistance to minority businesses to not only gain contracts from the government, but also those from the private sector. So they really there to help them grow in size and scale. So that's all we have for tonight. This is just a wrap up of what all we talked about. So we defined strategy. We talked about external and internal assessment. You make decisions, you write them down, you consider the certifications, and of course, I always end, and then you go. You just do it. All right. Thank you to our sponsors, the SLD and DC Department of Housing and Community Development. I hope you can join us on Thursday, where we wrap all of this up and we bring all of what we talked about and link it to the money. So this is where everything comes together. I'll talk a little bit more about branding because that has a financial impact. And I'll talk a little bit more about the business model because that's how you know you're going to make money in the financial section. And I'll definitely cover the 3 types of financial statements that you absolutely need. And it all kind of builds together. We'll have lots of other resources that we post and make available to you. And if you can kindly take a quick survey for me, that would be great. I'm just going to post it in the chat. It's only it's 3 questions. It takes less than a minute. And it just lets us know if any other information you want, and we're going to be sure to get it to you. So I posted in the chat, please, if you can do that for us, that'd be great. And I know it's just about 7:30 and I wanted to end on time. I'm sorry, Baldwin, I went a little over.
Oh, no.
It was a big topic.
You're right on time. You're right on time. That's great. That's great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you're able to access the link in the chat to do the survey, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll also send it out again via email tomorrow, along with the link to the video recording for the session and the presentation, because as Dr. Walker said, it's a lot of information. So we don't expect you guys to take it all in just an hour and 15 minutes, but we definitely look forward to scheduling one-on-ones with you all. Dr. Walker will sit down with you and draft up with you a action plan, and then our team will definitely take the baton and bring you guys all the way through to the successful stages that you're looking forward to go to for your businesses. Again, thank you all for joining. If there are no further questions for Dr. Walker or myself,
Yes, are there any questions?
Yeah. If there are no more questions, we will see you all on Thursday at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Good to meet everybody. See you Thursday.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
No problem. Good to see you.
You all are going to send this one too, right?
Yes.
I apologize. Yeah, I was late. I had a client in here and it ran over way longer than I had. So I have to go back and look. But thank you for what I did get.
Understood. Sounds great.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.